Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Core Values Podcast. My name is Elliott, and this week on the show, we are going to be talking about gigs and some of the crazy things that have happened to us over the years. Ian Blegan, Ed Gunther, and I will also discuss some ways musicians can be better prepared for those moments of crisis, and talk about some gear we all keep with us when we travel for work. Without further ado, please enjoy this episode of the Core Values Podcast. All right, you guys ready to do this?
Yep.
All right, I'm sitting here with Ed Gunther and Ian Blegan, my colleagues from UNC Greensboro and the Durham Symphony. Welcome to episode 3 of the Core Values Podcast. And today we decided that we're going to talk about some of the horror stories that we have experienced playing gigs. We're going to have a little roundtable discussion about some of the things that caught us off guard. You know, I can speak for Ian and Ed that they are some of the most professional people I've ever worked with. I would hope that they'd say the same thing about me. But what we're going to do today is just talk about, you know, that one instance or a few instances where we came in and the rules had changed, or, you know, something just didn't feel right, or we were caught off guard or were unprepared. And there's one story in particular that we are going to call the Tailcoat affair. And we're going to talk about that right now. So who wants to start us off?
All right, so it was kind of a last minute trying to fill out the ensemble for this opportunity that we all had. So it came together pretty quickly. I think I ended up having a week and a half or 2 weeks from when I was contracted to the actual performance. I'm not sure if you guys' timeline was the same or if you had a little bit more.
I think I had a couple extra days.
I honestly don't remember.
But in that time, it was got the music, of course, through a PDF over email, and then found out that the dress code was listed as white tie tailcoat, which
yes.
At least I assumed it originally that a regular tuxedo would be fine. I'm not sure if you were all under the same assumption.
Well, those kinds of things are always a little bit ambiguous when it says, you know, guys dress black. Does that mean tuxedo? Does that mean suit? Does that mean everybody in black? You know, when I see all black, that makes sense. But dress black, tuxedo, you know, those can sometimes mean the same thing or two entirely different things. So it's really important that people that contract gigs are very, very specific with, you know, what specifically should I show up in? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can I interject a horror story before we go on to the tuxedo affair?
Sure.
I was playing this one gig at this mega church, and it was one of these modern churches, and I didn't know what this church was before going there, and they just said dress trendy.
Ooh.
That's a big nope.
So I said, oh, well, it's a gig and it's at a church, so I'm going to wear my suit pants and my dress shoes and a dress shirt, you know? And I show up there and they just did not approve of what I was wearing. They're like, do you have any like black jeans or Vans? I said no. And it was like a 3-hour drive, so I'm not going to go back home to get black jeans.
If someone said dress trendy, I would have probably just shown up in all black. That's just one of those things. I also perform at churches pretty frequently, and you know, church clothes is one thing, but if I'm there and I'm a paid professional, I want to look the part, so to speak. So I would usually dress in all black and probably throw on a black blazer or something like that. You can never really go wrong with dressing up in all black. That's trendy, you know, and professional looking. So to those of you out there who may, you know, play a gig similar to what Ed's talking about, just show up in all black. It's super easy, and no one's going to fault you for it. It's trendy, it's professional looking, it's stylish. Everyone looks good in all black. I think that we can just leave it at that.
It's kind of the unspoken default unless otherwise specified.
Exactly.
Right, and that's why all the musicians showed up in all black or whatever, but they really wanted like street clothes. It was bizarre.
Well, now that we all have tailcoats, we can just show up in our tailcoats and be trendy and fancy at the same time. All right, Ian,
That's what
continue.
I'm going to do next time.
So yeah, anyway, I assumed that it was just regular tuxedo, but just to be sure, emailed the person coordinating all the musicians and asked, and she did specify that tailcoats were required. So then it was, you have a week and a half to find one and hope you have the funds in your bank account if you're not, because it's not a cheap expense. I mean, if you want a tailcoat, it'll be $150, $200.
We're not going to get into too much of how much the gig was
Yeah.
and how far away it was, but let's just say, it was not nearby for any of us for this gig, and tailcoats are not cheap, and the gig was, it would cover it, but still you had to cover the cost of the tailcoat before the gig started and before any of us got paid. So it
Yeah.
was a really weird event for us to have to do. Ed, I don't know if you already had a tailcoat. Did you already have one?
No, I ordered one online, and
Okay.
well, the thing is, they emailed me saying like, "Oh, we didn't have your size," even though it said your size was in stock. So then
Mm-hmm.
I had to reply to their emails to okay a one size down, but I didn't do that, so they never sent it. And then I'm like, "Well, where's my tailcoat?" Because I had plenty of time, and they said, "Oh, well, you didn't email us back." I was like, "What do you mean? I ordered it, and they said delivery on a day." So I okayed the one size down, and they sent it, but it got there like 3 hours after I had to leave for the gig. So what I ended up doing was swinging by a colleague's place and borrowing their tailcoat.
All right, so then I'll pick up where Ian left off here. Ian and I actually talked a little bit before I think we had emailed the booker for this gig, and I was with my girlfriend, and she actually knew someone where she lived that was a tailor and owned one of those stores, and so it was like 25 minutes. I had a tailcoat in hand for myself, and then Ian and I we were about the same size, and so I had you try mine on, and then she went back and got you one as well. So fortunately for us, this got taken care of pretty quickly, and we were able to get our tailcoats and be, very prepared for this gig. We went in, music fully prepared. We got there in plenty of time, and then that's when things started to get a little funky. We all sit down, we're playing this piece, and we're rehearsing it as if we've all played it, for weeks and weeks and weeks. We're running all of these weird spots, and then all of a sudden we start getting these directions that, well, we're not going to start at the beginning. We're actually going to start at, 2/3 of the way through the piece, and then we're going to play all the way to the end, and then
there was no directions after that.
That was all we were told.
All I want to do is just make sure everything is really clear, so when it comes time to actually play the gig, you don't have to worry about me. And so I raised my hand and I asked what I thought was a really simple question. Are we going to play this all the way down? Are we just running some spots? Or, I'm not quite sure, what you specifically want us to do here. And then I got this variety of looks from everyone else in the orchestra. Some people were like, "Oh, don't worry, you'll just figure it out." And then there were other people like, "Yeah, I'm also very confused."
I think most people were very confused.
Yeah.
I would hope so, because it was really confusing to me too. And I know I was looking at both of you guys like, what the heck is going on here? And then we come to learn that the gig in question was actually this business, what would you guys call it?
Like a training seminar, kind of?
Yeah, or like a team building exercise.
Team building.
Kind of like that, where it was designed so that the orchestra was supposed to be all of the workers of whatever company working together, and that we feed off of one another's energy, and we can do all these things. But and that's all fine and good, but I would have liked to know that going in and not be part of the surprise. We were the professionals at work there. That was our job that day, but we could have known a little bit more information going in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like where he says, as long as you start at rehearsal 43 when I come on stage, everything will be fine. We'll go back and hit the other stuff.
Yeah.
When?
Yeah, we didn't really touch on that, did we? We ended up playing through the whole thing at the end as kind of an encore, oh, look at us all working and playing together kind of thing, and that was great. But that was not incredibly clear going into the start of the actual gig. Am I wrong?
Not at all. It's really hard to be prepared when you don't know what you need to be prepared to do. So
it would have been better if he was just like, hey, this is like an experiment. We're going to start and stop at a lot of different places, and I'll call out the rehearsal number well ahead of time, and it'll be very clear. But he didn't really do that. It was kind of like, oh, we'll just start at 43, and then we'll see what happens.
Would either of you say that we really needed a tailcoat for that gig?
no, not at all.
No.
See, and that was just one of those things where I left that gig just kind of shaking my head like, what was that?
Yeah.
We did get fed, and we did have some drinks afterwards, which was great.
There was an open bar.
Yes, and that was
which made
that was,
everything worth it.
Yeah, I would say so. I would definitely go back and do it again now that I know what I'm doing. But walking into that gig, that was very confusing, and I'm glad everything worked out. It was really fun. It was fun to play with you guys, but
I do that one every weekend.
I would absolutely do it as well too. I could do that every single week. And now that I know what I'm in for, I think it's great that those kinds of things exist. So I don't want to completely pan that whole experience or criticize it too much. But I think the moral of that story is it always feels good to be as prepared as possible. So thinking about that, what are some times in your professional music career individually where you walked into a gig and unbeknownst to you, you were not ready for what was about to happen?
My first gig with an orchestra, my teacher was playing principal trumpet, and he just said, oh, we're doing, I don't know, Bolero, and we need a fourth trumpet player for Bolero. So can you just hop in and play the fourth part to Bolero, which is super easy. I said, yeah, it's fine. And then I got there, and he's like, hey, you know what? It's kind of a hard concert. How about you play assistant to me on everything? So then I just sat there sight reading on the concert, playing assistant on everything.
So you had to change parts completely, even though you had prepared.
Well, I mean, we played Bolero, and I played Bolero, but like every other piece that program, I was only gonna play the one piece, and I ended up sitting in on the whole thing. And that was I was a freshman or sophomore in college, so it was like my first gig.
Dang. Ian, what about you?
Well, one is I was playing in a chamber concert, I think, a couple years ago, and the horn part was written in B, which, unbeknownst to me at the time, was supposed to be B flat. But I learned the part in B and showed up, and we started our first rehearsal, and I couldn't figure out why everything was wrong.
Man, you guys are so out of tune.
Yeah, like exactly a half step wrong on everything. So there's that, and then similar to what Ed went through, I was playing a gig with an orchestra this past summer, and it was an Independence Day concert, so we were doing some marches and patriotic music, and then we were also doing we did like a film score suite because it was like the 20th anniversary of Phantom Menace, I think, Star Wars, and then some anniversary for Forrest Gump, and then some anniversary for Star Trek as well. So it was a long concert, and I was playing second, and there was no assistant. And then in our last dress rehearsal, the principal horn took his first part and put it on my stand and took my second part. So then I ended up just playing principal for the Star Wars medley that we were doing at the time. So all the solos involved with that.
Well, that sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was fun, but
everyone in this podcast is a huge Star Wars fan, so that seems like one of those risks that we would all absolutely want to take just to play those really famous pieces of music. I have one that happened pretty recently. I got contracted to do a gig at a church, and there were 2 dates, and this was my mistake, 100% on me for not reading clearly enough. I had just assumed that the first date in the evening was a rehearsal, and then the next date, which was in the morning on a Sunday, was the gig. And so I showed up in street clothes, and I saw one of my other colleagues walk in all black, and he looks at me and his eyes go wide, and he goes, "Elliott, what are you doing? Did you bring your clothes?" And I look at him, just stop dead in my tracks and go, "No, isn't tonight just the rehearsal?" And he goes, "No, there's a service tonight too." And that was the one time that I just felt completely embarrassed, completely underprepared. that I had just shown up in probably a Star Wars t-shirt and khakis, and was about to play this church gig. Fortunately for me, the person who was running this gig was the organist and lived nearby and was about the same size as me. And so he ran home, grabbed a black turtleneck, and gave it to me. And thankfully, the khakis that I was wearing kind of matched the wood up on the altar, and I was behind like a little railing. So it truly wasn't the end of the world. I don't think anyone, unless they looked really hard, could tell that I was wearing khaki pants, because my whole waist down was kind of covered. So I was, fortunately okay, and nothing bad happened, and I've since been back to that place, and we can laugh about it now. But boy, did I felt terrible for that. And since then, I now keep a black t-shirt and a black pair of socks and a really crummy pair of black pants in my car at all times. It's just in a little teeny tiny box that I keep underneath where the spare tire is, just in case. I never want to be that underprepared ever again.
Yeah, there's something to be said about the concert black in the trunk at all times. And the car mutes, too. You always got to have a car mute. Just in case you didn't bring your mute, you got the car mute.
Yeah, so that's what those metal mutes are for on the horn, I guess. Just so they can bang around in your trunk for 6 months until you actually need one.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's about the only thing they're good for, but yeah.
So let me pose a question to both of you guys. What do you do when you aren't prepared for a gig? What are some tips that you would give listeners where they show up to a gig and something happens, or they're not quite prepared, or they miss the directions on something? What are some things that you could recommend besides, just keeping some concert black and a couple mutes in your car?
Well, in terms of, if say you're not prepared musically, like you just kind of skimmed through your part, it didn't look too bad, and then you may have missed a page or something. If you see something and you think you're not prepared for it, don't make it a big deal. Like, try to not show that, because odds are nobody will notice anyway. But if you start freaking out, you're gonna make it worse than it actually probably is.
Right.
And if you do end up making a mistake, and just call yourself on it. It's music. Nobody's ever really perfect. So don't beat yourself up. Own up to things when they happen.
If we were to make a gig go bag, what are some things that you would put in it? So let's say you have like a little, I actually have a shower tote that I got from Target, I think, and it's pretty big. What are some things, if you guys had one of those, that you would put in so that you could bring it to a gig and always be prepared for the worst possible scenario?
So there's a couple items that you just gotta have, and I keep them in my case at all times. One is hair bands or rubber bands, because you never know what's going to come loose and what needs to be tied up.
I don't have any of those. That's a great idea.
Yeah, clothespins, because you never know when you're going to be next to an event and your music is going to be flying all over the place, or if it's going to be outside. I used to keep some plexiglass in my car, but I stopped.
Oh, to weigh down the music?
Yeah, I haven't played a lot of outdoor gigs recently.
Gotcha. Ian, what about you?
Personally, I play music off of an iPad, and I know you do most of the time now as well, if not always. So part of that is, of course, an iPad has a battery and it can die. So absolutely take a charger with you to everything.
Yep. And now they make chargers that have batteries built in. I have this one where it's a little bit bigger than an Apple battery charger, but it has, I think, like a 20,000 milliamp battery inside. So you can charge a device through the USB port without actually having it be plugged in. So a backup battery that also can plug into the wall, that's something that I have, and totally agree with that as well. What are some other things, maybe horn specific, because you and I both play horn? What are some backup equipment and tools that you think we should have as horn players?
I personally don't carry it with me, but I should, is string.
Extra string.
Because you never
definitely
know when a rotor's going to break, or when the string on your rotor's going to break.
I just bought 1,000 feet of horn string, or the fishing wire that a lot of horn players use nowadays. So when this is all over, you can come over and take a couple 100 feet of string, dude.
Nice, appreciate it.
Awesome.
Of course, extra rotor oil, linkage oil, slide grease, everything that you should have in your case, and then more just in case you took something out at home to fix something and you didn't put it back. Now you have an extra one at your gig.
Yeah, I always keep an extra pencil and oil in my mute bag because if I don't have it in my trumpet case, because I do that all the time. I take it out to oil my valves and then I leave it out and I don't put it back in my trumpet case, and then I show up to a gig without any valve oil.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think a lot of these things could probably go in cases that are a little bit bigger. The reason why I said gig bag is because I have a more compact case and I can't even fit a mute in there now. But some other things that I think would probably be super helpful and super easy to pack would just be a black towel. Just in case if you're playing on a beautiful ancient church floor, you obviously don't want to go dumping your water onto the floor directly.
Or if you have quick mute changes.
Exactly. Yeah. Another thing that I have, and I don't know where I got this or if I found it, but I actually have a few Leatherman tools, like the company Leatherman, that have little teeny tiny screwdrivers and scissors and pliers. So when we have to change our string, in a panic mode, that we actually have a tool that will help us with that. So I have one of those. I keep one in the very small compartment in my case, and then I have one in my gig bag as well. Also, a couple extra mouthpieces never hurt to have separate from your case, just in case you leave your mouthpiece on your stand at home and you pack your horn up and you go and you leave your mouthpiece.
Or you were buzzing in the car on the way to the gig.
Or you were buzzing in the car, absolutely. Anything else?
I've never had it happen, but every time I drive off to a gig, I'm like 10 minutes down the road, I think, did I pack my mouthpiece?
All the time.
Every time.
Yeah, for me, it's the bell.
Yeah.
I've had my screw bell horn. It's my first ever screw bell horn. I got it like 5 or 6 years ago at this point, and there are still times like I'll pack up my horn at home, getting ready to go to a gig, and in the car I'm like, wait, did I actually put the bell in, or is it still sitting on my couch?
I remember that because we were driving carpool into a Durham Symphony gig,
and
you made one of us go in the trunk.
It was me.
And check to see if your bell was in your case.
Guys, I gotta be prepared. I don't want to be the one that isn't prepared. It's a paranoia. It's a superstitious, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Well, the solution is just get an extra bell and keep it in your car.
A car bell.
Yeah, just have that rattling around in the back. Have it rattle around in the back with the mutes and and the extra music stand. Yes?
Yes.
Always have the really crummy wire
one.
Preferably black music stand in a little slipcase in the back of your car. If you never use it, great.
Good.
But it's there.
You will.
And I've definitely lent mine out to people more than one occasion. I have my nice Manhasset one that I keep at home that I'll throw in the car for gigs, and then someone will always inevitably show up to a gig where they were supposed to bring a stand and they didn't, and so I'll run out to my car and get it for them, and then I save the day. I would much rather be that guy that saves the day than that guy that shows up without his bell.
Yeah. And like mutes too. If I had a nickel every time I had to loan a mute to somebody on a gig that forgot their mute bag.
Yeah.
I always have an extra straight mute, sometimes two.
I imagine that's a bigger deal for trumpet players since you have more than one, maybe two. But we just have a straight mute, and then sometimes a stop mute is needed, but rarely. Y'all have 4,000.
Well, we were born with a stop mute already kind of attached to our bodies, which is our right hand. So I don't typically carry a stop mute, although it is always in my little gig go bag. And then I have a separate straight mute little bag that attaches to the outside of my horn because I bought these little carabiners that can clip on to where the backpack strap goes. So that works out for me. I have another question for you guys. The meme when it comes to gigs is that there are 3 elements to playing a gig, and you can only pick 2 of them. You have gigs that pay really well, that pay good money. You have gigs where there are great people and great colleagues and your friends. And then there are gigs with great music, great rep. So you can pick 2. You can pick gigs that pay very well, gigs with your friends, and gigs with good music. Ed, which 2 do you pick?
I mean, define pay well. Because if it pays really well, I'm picking paying well. I don't care about y'all.
Okay. So music and money.
Honestly, I'd probably pick hang over music. I know I'm a musician, but if it's good money and good hang, like you're playing crappy music, who cares? It's still a good time.
I'm also in the same boat as you.
Yeah, then you can make fun of the crappy music with your friends.
Yeah.
And then you can talk about it on a podcast. Okay, so I think that about wraps it up for this episode of the podcast. We want to thank everybody for listening. We hope that all of you are staying safe out there. We hope to get back to playing with all of our friends and making money and playing good music. We'd love to pick all three, but we hope you get back to that very soon. So until next time, I'm Elliott Stanger.
I'm Ian Blegan.
And I'm Ed Gunther.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.